course, joining me now is a very special guest from Russia. His name is Andrey Kortunov. He is associated with Valda International Club Expert, which is a Moscow-based think tank. So thank you so much for joining us here. So today we have invited you to discuss with you perhaps what unfolded at White House's Oval Office today. In fact, we all saw that how there were heated exchange of words between President Trump and President Zelensky. Perhaps President Trump wanted mineral deal to be signed by President Zelensky, but without signing a deal after heated argument before the media persons at the Oval Office, President Zelensky departed from United States. How do you look at this particular development where on one end, President Trump is trying hard to push peace in Europe? He has sent teams to hold talks with Russia in Riyadh. Perhaps he is also speaking to the European partners so that peace can prevail in Europe. On the other end, President Zelensky walking out of the minerals deal at the last moment.
Well, let me start with saying that for many people here in Moscow, the recent trip of President Zelensky to Washington was a matter of concern. Because there were expectations that probably the Ukrainian leader would be in a position to convince Donald Trump to change his views on the conflict, to consider security guarantees to Kyiv, and to sign, this economic deal that would link the United States to the Ukrainian leadership. However, nothing like that happened. On the contrary, one can argue that right now President Trump is less confident that Zelensky is looking for a peace settlement. And I think that basically it is a major setback for the Ukrainian diplomacy. And of course, indirectly, it makes Russia's positions in this conflict stronger than before.
Sir, but entire Europe is still backing President Zelensky. In fact, there are more than 40 countries which have issued statement in support of President Zelensky. There is no doubt that the fight that Ukraine could give to Russia in the last 3 years has largely been with the support of United States and Europe combined. And United States had more share, had contributed more to that combat. But Europe is still with President Zelensky. Where do you see the future of peace talks? Do you see that this entire the entire process of peace talks have broken down, have fallen apart, or do you still see hope?
Well, we should always look for some solutions, even of the most difficult problems. Of course, right now, there is a risk that President Trump might simply withdraw from this conflict, saying, okay, if Europeans want to support Kyiv, let them support Kyiv, but I'm out. I did my best. I tried to promote peace, but I failed. And of course, in this sense, the responsibility will be imposed on the Ukrainian side because allegedly, at least that's what President Trump stated, that Zelensky is not ready to engage into a peace dialogue with Moscow. And in this case, of course, the big issue is whether European allies of Ukraine have enough resources and enough political will to replace the United States. And of course, there are many doubts about that.
But they're ready to increase the defense spending, and they're ready to even contribute more to the NATO grouping.
In fact, they are ready, but whether it is enough or not, and at what pace are they ready to increase their military support to Kyiv, that remains unclear. And maybe by the end of this week, they will have a meeting in London and a decision will be made. But definitely still, no matter what they decide, that puts Ukraine into a rather precarious situation.
It's been more than 12 hours since the Oval Office meet between President Trump and President Zelensky, but there has not been a single word coming from Kremlin. What do you think is going to be Russia's position on what has unfolded in DC?
Well, I think that the reaction will be very cautious, and they do not want to create an impression that Trump acts on behalf of the Kremlin. But I think that might be yet another incentive for the Kremlin to engage into some kind of negotiations with the United States, not only on Ukraine, but on the bilateral relations in general. As you know, we've just had this meeting in Istanbul. It seemed to go well, and we expect more meetings, maybe not very long time before we see a summit meeting between President Putin and President Trump. And if such a meeting takes place, it will be a very serious step forward in the bilateral relations.
Because of this approach of President Trump, there is concern in whole of Europe. Even the transatlantic relationship is seeing new dip. Is perhaps witnessing new dip. I also want to understand from you. In fact, many geopolitical experts have been talking about this approach of President Trump. That President Trump wants to pull Russia out of isolation, which perhaps President Biden had pushed Russia into, and also want Russia, which is less dependent on China. That is perhaps the game plan of President Trump, because President Trump feels that China is the biggest threat to the world, not Russia.
Well, you're right. I think that this is one of the intentions of President Trump. But we should keep in mind that the Russian-Chinese relations have their own logic, their own momentum. So they do not fully depend on the United States. And even if relations between Moscow and Washington get better, it does not necessarily mean that the cooperation with Beijing will experience a major setback. So I wouldn't count on that. I think that these relationships have their own foundation, and they will continue to grow. But ideally, as I understand, President Trump, he would like to have good relations with both Moscow and Beijing. And they say that he might look for a summit meeting with Chairman Xi. So let's see what happens. Definitely, Trump considers China to be the major challenge to the United States, but he's ready for a deal, as always.
Yeah. Also, sir, would like to understand from you, do you see that the relations between President Zelensky and Trump can be repaired again? Can the two leaders come again under the one roof, or it has become irreparable? The relations have completely broken down forever and ever.
Well, nothing is forever in politics, so definitely some damage limitation is still possible. But that means that President Zelensky has to accept the Trump's approach, and the Trump's approach basically means that the two sides engaged in this conflict should come to some kind of a ceasefire, and it's very unlikely that Ukraine will regain the territories that it has already lost. It should drop its intention to join NATO. So there are certain things that should be done in order to repair the relationship.
But Trump's approach has largely been seen more inclined towards Russia. Perhaps that's the major concern for the European countries. US has voted for Russia in United Nations. Trump has reiterated what Russia has been saying, that NATO has gone to the borders of Russia to fight. Trump has extended hands of friendship with Putin, the way peace process has commenced in Riyadh. So Europe is cautious. Europe is right now observing what President Trump is doing, and he's doing all on his own. He's not taking Europe's help. He's not, seeking their assistance. Perhaps that's not going down well with Europe. And I would like to know Russia's perspective, that even if tomorrow there is a deal which gets readied without Europe's participation, will Russia be able to accept that deal? Because European countries are a major stakeholder. They are neighbors to Russia.
Well, I think that in Russia they believe that the United States should find ways to deliver Europe. And if you follow the official statements that come from the Kremlin, they assume that sooner or later, willy-nilly, but Europe will follow the changes in the US policy. It will take time. There'll be procrastinations, there'll be delays, and Europe will be reluctant to subscribe to the Trump's policies immediately. But the perception is that sooner or later, Europe will get to the table, and of course, Europe will have to accept the terms of the deal which are offered in the White House, not the other way around.